May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall soft upon your field. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
Takes the win. Adam Carroll, absolutely delighted.
Taupo is home to round 4 of the A1GP series, and championship leader Adam Carroll joined John Watson for a look at the track.
Adam, we're coming up to the quickest corner here in Taupo, turn 9, with this very tricky entrance to the corner.
It is tricky, John. It's the fastest corner on the circuit, and the entry just can sneak up on you very, very quickly, and it's easy to miss the apex and run wide.
Well, we're just at the apex, but I've seen lots of drivers 6-8 feet off the apex, and they all end up, well, off on the dirt.
Yeah, it's quite easily done, and especially from the apex from mid to the exit, it's quite bumpy, and the rear comes loose, and you can have quite a lot of oversteer. And once you miss the curb and run wide, the car can bottom out and spit you off into the inside of the circuit.
At the end of the 800 metre straight here, we got turn 12, but it's a real bottleneck of a corner.
It is tight. 800 metres is quite a long straight, so we'll have a reasonable top speed here. It produces an opportunity for overtaking because it is a big stop and it is quite tight, but it's also easy to make a mistake and shoot wide and miss the corner.
Well, you come out of 12 and you've got the option to take turn 13, or if you get it all wrong, shoot across the grass.
Yeah, there's a few people went across the grass last year, and there's quite a lot of dust is now thrown onto the circuit. But the main thing is to maximise your braking there, not run too wide, so you have a good line for here.
And really, turn 13 is about being neat and tidy for turn 14. Let's get you back onto the pit straight.
It is, yeah. You just got to stay nice and tight to the curb. You get pretty much just one line here. There's quite a lot of dirt forms on the outside here, so keep it nice and tight and just set the car up for the last turn.
A short pit straight sets you up for the 3.3 kilometre lap and 14 turns. Hard braking into turn 1, keep the car neat and tidy all the way around the circumference of the corner. A quick dash up to turn 2, a more deceptive corner than it looks on screen, then quickly back to the left for turn 3. Immediately on the brakes and then over to the right for turn 4, but stay off those curbs on the outside because it's slippery and very dusty. Turn 5 is a mirror of 4, then it's flat out through turn 6, then hard in the brakes into turn 7. Gentle on the throttle on the exit, the torque of the Ferrari engine could spit you round and see you facing backwards up towards turn 8. Flat out on the exit, then hard on the brakes into turn 9. Careful of the bumps on the approach and watch the runoff on the outside of the corner. The curve at 10 leads you nicely into turn 11, but it's a more difficult entry. You've got a wide choice, literally on the outside or hug it all the way around. But the key is getting off turn 11 because this leads on to the 800 metre long straight up to 270 kilometres per hour before you've got to brake right on the limit to the revised corner we saw for the first time last year. Prudence with the throttle and the steering wheel will pay you in lap time. If you're too aggressive, you'll lose time. 14 leads on to the start-finish straight, and for Adam Carroll, I hope his sunburn didn't affect his lap.
Welcome back. Live qualifying of 2009 about to get underway in Taupo. Let's hand you over to our commentary team, John Watson and Ben Edwards.
We're getting ready for the first segment of qualifying. Let's quickly run through the driver list for you. It's John Martin for Australia. Philippe Guimaraes lines up for Brazil. Frankie Cheng, Kongfu Cheng for China. Loic Duval is in the French car. Dan Clark drives for Great Britain. First time we've seen Dan Clark at the wheel of an A1GP car. Then we've got Satrio Hermanto for Indonesia, Narenka Takayan for India, Adam Carroll, of course, for Ireland, Eduardo Piscopo for Italy, Daniel Morad for Lebanon, Faraz Fauzi for Malaysia, and welcome back to Salvador Duran of Team Mexico. It'll be great to see him back out there once again. Clivio Piccioni for Monaco, Robert Doornbos for the Netherlands. Chris van der Drift is the local hero who's going to hope to uphold honour for New Zealand. Then we've got Philippe Albuquerque for Portugal, Adrian Zaug for South Africa, Neil Yanni, of course, as we mentioned, for Switzerland, and as we saw a moment ago, Marco Andretti back for Team USA. There's Salvador Duran, John, and I know you and I are both excited to see him back in A1GP.
Yeah, we're big fans of the Mexican driver. Didn't do very much of it in the last series, but back into the Mexican car. Spent his last year racing in high-end single-seater racing in Europe, gained a lot more experience to match the speed, the raw speed. Hopefully that speed's now going to be a little bit more refined and could be a real dark horse here this weekend.
So next race, Gauteng in South Africa, 20th to 22nd of February. I have to say I'm so looking forward to that, going to Kyalami, Gauteng, and John, you a former lap record holder there. You raced there many times in your career, and I'm just looking forward to the whole atmosphere of the place.
Yes, I mean, it was the circuit that we're going to, of course, not the circuit that I raced on. It's a revised layout. The original circuit now is actually, in fact, a high-end industrial plus domestic estate. So it's going to be an interesting venue for me, hopefully, to get to drive for the first time in the fall series an A1GP car powered by Ferrari.
Well, the track is open, but no one's out to play just yet. There's Dan Clark driving for Team GBR. But let's get a quick word from our two roving reporters in the pit lane, Diana Binks and James Hinchcliffe. First over to Hinch. What do you reckon today, James? Do you reckon we were talking about it earlier, I know, and thinking it might be a bit of a lottery. Is that your feeling about this qualifying session?
Yeah, very much so, Ben. From what we've seen in practice, cars have been going off a lot. The circuit is very dusty, especially offline, and it's been causing a lot of red flags. And of course, in qualifying, if there's a red flag, the clock doesn't stop. So it's going to be a bit of a gamble for teams on when they go out. If a car does go off and cause a red flag, they might lose a chance to get a qualifying run in, and that could be devastating. Diana?
Absolutely, Hinch, up here this end of the pits, last minute decisions on tyres. They're really sort of trying to see how dirty that track is, because we've had some support qualifying sessions going on out there. So, but generally, you know, last minute decision on the tyres, and just that waiting game to get it right.
Thanks, Diana. Yep, we'll be keeping an eye on both ends of the pit lane and trying to monitor who's on new tyres when as we go through these 4 qualifying segments. They generally have 3 new sets of tyres to use, unless they used a set of tyres this morning, which we do think, as I say, 1 or 2 teams did. But Australia, interestingly, heading down pit lane with a brand new set of slicks on. You can see that fairly clearly, but that doesn't look right, John.
No, he was coming down extremely slowly, and he's pulled over into the pit lane itself, maybe trying to, I don't know what the problem is. Certainly a problem for John Martin and Team Australia, as Frankie Cheng for China is now, in fact, the first car to leave the pit lane and actually take access onto the circuit.
Yeah, good to see Frankie back. Ho Pin Tung is here this weekend as well. He's been in the China car the last few events, but Frankie Cheng now has his opportunity. They've got it fired up again. We saw Mexico do something similar this morning, didn't we?
Yes, just keep an eye on John Martin, because he was pulled up in front of the stewards today on a number of occasions, infringing the white line that delineates the exit of the pit lane, and he was creeping across it, and then eventually a message went up on board on the screen, the timing and scoring screens, advising the member for Team Australia, the team manager principally, to come immediately to see the stewards, but they were so upset that John Martin continued to pass over that white line.
Yeah, very strict on that here, and no surprise really, because it's fairly tight on the pit lane exit with going around the outside of turn 1. You're watching Frankie Cheng now head down. He's on towards the end of his outlap. Remember, you only get the 1 flying lap in each of these 4 segments, so that means that Frankie's now heading down towards the final sequence of corners and about to start his 1 flying lap in this session.
Benchmark time from this morning, quickest lap so far of the weekend, went to Italy, a 1 minute 15.112. So that's what we're going to look to see, whether China, Frankie Cheng on a new set of Michelin tyres can get close to, or in fact exceed. We noted that Australia, when they went out in their outlap, John Martin was hard on it. I suspect everybody's now realised, with a new set of tyres, it's all about pussyfooting around in the opening lap. You've got to get those tyres really grooved into the racetrack, because otherwise you may miss your opportunity on that 1 flying lap.
Well, Frankie's pushing pretty hard. It is difficult for the first few out there to monitor what the grip levels are like, but things are looking okay so far. The 24-year-old, his best ever qualifying performance is 4th on the grid. Last season he's also had a 1/3 place finish, but the best qualifying performance for Team China in this 4th season of A1GP so far has been 10th. So that's what they're really looking to beat at the moment. Up towards the turn 11 section.
Yeah, took a little bit of a late break into turn 11, nearly overran the corner, but recovered. But that will have cost him a few tenths of a second. And maybe the new set of tyres he was relying on not quite giving him the grip again. Track, of course, being used by support events. Levels of grip and track conditions will be different.
Well, I can tell you that Australia are about a second faster through the first sector than Team China, so this isn't looking as though it's going to be a particularly quick lap. Across the line, it's 1:19.540. How does that compare with what he did earlier?
He did a 17.4 this morning. That's disappointing,
Yeah.
indeed. I mean, even to be a second quicker as Australia are on that first split, they would need to be at least 3 seconds quicker to even begin to think about getting somewhere in the top 10.
Right, let's see where John Martin comes to then. Across the line he comes, and that's a 1:16.388, so he's 3 seconds faster than the China car.
And he's about 0.03 of a second slower than he did this morning, but that's more representative of what we might expect. And that's not going to be any better than getting him at best into the top 10, more likely between 10 and 15.
Yeah, and the track will get a bit quicker as we go through this session, but there are only 3.5 minutes on this one left. Remember, 10-minute sessions now, so it's really fast and furious action in qualifying. You can't afford to sit around too long. You're watching the Brazilian car now going onto its flying lap.
And the Brazil team may just have done this in terms of timing, getting the car right, just about right, because there will very shortly be a mass exodus from the pit lane as the remaining field makes their way in. Narain Karthikeyan.
He's gone off, and Narain Karthikeyan, was he on his hot lap? No, he was on his out lap, John. He wasn't even on his fast lap at that point.
And just coming up into turn 11, the corner that's been so problematic to everybody. We saw China almost do this, but Narain's gone and done it properly, so he's got his set of tyres brand new, or just a very low mileage set of tyres, well and truly clogged up with all that dust that he's picked up going through the gravel trap. Back to Brazil through turn 9.
Yeah, he's on a pretty good lap here to Felipe Guimarães. Things are looking as though he might challenge the time that Australia has already set of 1:16.380, and he's up, as you can see, by 70 thousandths of a second. So keep it together, Felipe, the youngster who flew through the air last time out in Malaysia. If you remember that accident he had at the start of the sprint race, and by the way, it'll be a standing start for the sprint race here in New Zealand, but he recovered well with a good performance in the feature race.
Now just get your braking in check, done it pretty well. Into turn 12, then cut back to the right for 13, then immediately you've got to cut back to the left for the final turn onto the start-finish straight. Can he go quickest? Yes, he has, 1:16.346.
Good lap from Felipe Guimarães. Philippe Albuquerque and Marco Andretti joining the track just as he completes that. You can see how tight it is there, and now the track really starts to get busy.
Well, it's going to be very difficult indeed, because with cars coming in, we've got Brazil coming in, we've got other cars on track. India somewhere there, we're looking now at Narain Karthikeyan, who has yet to establish a time. So the Indian driver, and again up into the corner, one lap ago he went wide. This time does it pretty much perfect, I would say, for Narain Karthikeyan.
And he's up on the timing as well. The first sector he was up, and he's carrying a bit of an advantage over Brazil here, who are currently quickest. Can India take the top spot? But remember, we've only had 3 cars so far establish a time.
So through these final corners, easy to get it wrong, but look, much more grip coming from the Indian car than certainly we've seen over the past 2 days.
Across the line he goes. India goes fastest. It's a 1:16.165. Greg Wheeler gets on the radio to Narain. A good effort from him.
Malaysia, who struggled on Friday, they discovered a problem with the brakes. Now, come on. So in Malaysia, go 4th. That's disappointing for Farouz Fauzi.
Yeah, that is disappointing. He's in behind Australia, ahead of China. And he was going better than that this morning. Now, just going on to his hot lap, I can see his team Switzerland, by the way. We'll keep an eye on Mexico, though, because Salvador Duran, as we mentioned, back in A1GP for the first time since the start of Season 3. He did the very first race of Season 3 at Zandvoort, but then hasn't raced an A1GP car since. Of course, it's his first experience qualifying the new Ferrari-powered machine.
Yeah, running behind Robert Doornbos for the Netherlands. He also was quick this morning, but coming into turn 12 is a problem. So we got a car ahead. Salvador Duran, the distraction of a car ahead of you. You're completing a lap, another one about to go on to a hot lap. So disappointment for Mexico.
Yeah, not great, and he goes 4th. And meanwhile, as Doornbos in the Netherlands car is now onto his hot lap, I can tell you Switzerland are once again setting the pace, but there's a number of quick cars out there.
Car off up at turn 5, and that again is going to drag dirt onto the track at that point.
Ireland have the fastest first sector at the moment, ahead even of Switzerland. Switzerland and Ireland are pretty close to each other.
South Africa off the road as in the exit of turn 5, kicking dust all over the racetrack as we go back to Neil Yarney.
Yeah, so Neil Yarney for Switzerland. He's been very poorly. How good can he make this lap? But behind him, Team Ireland, I think, might be even quicker. Let's see, this should be the fastest time for Switzerland. Yes, it is, but here comes Adam Carroll. He may well eclipse it. He does. Ireland takes it. 1:15.197, but still a few quick cars.
France to come. What can Loic Duval do?
Could be close, but I'm not sure he's third.
And Lebanon were third. They're now down to fourth.
Good effort from Daniel Morad again. Portugal coming in fourth place now, pushing Lebanon down. Cross the line, and USA only 12th. Well down for Marco Andretti. And then we see Italy in 10th position. A couple of more. Monaco could be a bit of a danger. Keep an eye on them. They were quick in practice, but on the splits, I don't know. On Indonesia in trouble there, just coming through the chicane.
It's Robert Doornbos from the Netherlands getting in traffic in the middle of those corners. Netherlands goes 6th.
Yeah, New Zealand only 16th there. Not great at all. Monaco coming in 11th.
Great drive from newcomer Tom Clark.
Dan Clark.
Ninth place for Great Britain. That really is a superb effort for the young British driver.
That is a very good effort, because Dan Clark's been out of competitive racing for a while. He's a bit ring rusty, but he's gone into the top 10 on that first segment of qualifying. Now remember, it's this one and the next one, the best lap that you get, either this segment or the next segment, that will actually line you up for the sprint race, and the track is likely to get faster. But right now, it's the team that not only is fastest here, but the leading team in A1GP World Cup of Motorsport, leading the series by some 8 points, Team Ireland, that are on top.
By 5 thousandths of a second, and you couldn't get much closer than that.
Great effort from Adam Carroll. He's maintaining that sort of sequence of results they had. Now this is when Adrian Zaug went off, John.
Yes, Adrian Zaug 19th and last in the first qualifying segment for sprint race. Getting it wrong again. Lots of cars have struggled coming out of turn 4. It's a quick corner, but you can get caught out.
Let's take a look at the positions after the first segment then. It's Ireland on top from Switzerland. Look how close they are in terms of time. Then France and Portugal. Lebanon well up again. Netherlands, good effort from Doornbos. India 7th, then Brazil. Dan Clark, great job from him, 9th so far. Australia 10th, Monaco 11th, followed by Italy and Mexico. Behind them we've got Malaysia, big surprise that. USA, New Zealand, that'll be disappointing for the team here on home soil. Followed by China, Indonesia and South Africa. Well, we knew the action was going to be fast and furious, and it proved to be, but it was much cleaner than we expected. No real mistakes apart from South Africa, and he managed to get back on track without causing a red flag. So much neater than we've had through some of the practice sessions.
Delighted to say so, because we've seen in the past cars have gone off, they got beached in the gravel, we've had a red flag, everything's shut down, and with 10 minutes of qualifying, a red flag would just about destroy it for everybody else who's not been out.
Right, let's get some news from the pits, particularly on tyre usage. First of all, Hinch, what can you tell us?
Well, it looks like most of the big hitters did go out on a new set of tires, but there's a couple black sheep or a couple sleepers in the field that didn't. They went out on old tires. Those were Portugal and Lebanon. Both guys have been quick in practice, and they still have 3 new sets now to use in the remaining 3 segments, so look for them to move up.
That's impressive, in fact, because they've both gone very well, so it's interesting. Portugal 4th, Lebanon 5th. Diana, what can you tell us?
Hi Ben, yes, well Team USA went out on used tyres for that session. Team Great Britain and Australia were on new, as were all the others really up this end of the pit lane.
Okay, that's good, and that makes sense too, because USA not quite as quick as they were this morning, but even so, if Portugal and Lebanon manage the times they did on used tyres, they're going to be a big threat when it comes to putting the new rubber on.
Yes, I mean, I'm not surprised that the time came from Philippe Albuquerque for Portugal, but I am pleased that Daniel Morad for Lebanon did a good job on used tyres, because he's a young driver who's got natural speed, but he's also just so aggressive at times. But he controlled himself, did a good run, and he's got himself on the 3rd row of the grid provisionally for the sprint race.
South Africa would love a good result here leading into their own race, their home race at Gauteng, Kyalami. It's going to be the first time A1GP has visited that track, and it's going to be a tremendous event. It's a huge amount of popularity out there for A1GP, but he'll be a bit disappointed at the moment after that off in the first segment, which puts South Africa actually last, potentially, for the sprint race.
Yeah, I mean, something of Adrian, we've seen Adrian often on the track this weekend. Hard to understand why, but, you know, the guy's got so much ability and talent.
Looking inside the Netherlands pit, good effort from Robert Doornbos back in the car. They're doing their usual alternating between Blake Molen and Doornbos for the Team Netherlands. And we've got a green light at the end of the pit lane once again. So the second segment of 10 minutes now gets underway. But again, there's no rush to get out there.
No, and it's the really rolling the dice. You've got to take a chance, sit in the pit lane. Ideally, you want to go out with 3 minutes to go, but you know you're going to go out with a lot of other cars. It depends where you are on the grid at the point you leave your pit box. You might think, I've got a reasonably clear run to the pit lane exit, and then suddenly 3 cars could come out ahead of you, and all your plans could be completely upset.
Daniel Mourad, there he is for Lebanon. He won a karting event, a major international karting event in Florida a few weeks ago, and he dominated the whole event, actually. He won every part of it that he could. Basically, he was in a class of his own, and I think that's helped keep him sharp and just keep the confidence as much as anything. Some drivers have likened certainly parts of this track to a kart track, and he seems to have got into the rhythm immediately.
Yeah, I think the big difference that they have to realise is that driving a kart, you use so much of your body to affect the kart's handling, the weight shift and so on and so forth. Weight shift in one of these cars is a totally different deal.
Yeah.
And what you do not want to do, and we've seen happen over the weekend, is a lot of drivers coming into a corner aggressively, trying to bully the car around or into a corner. And once the back loses traction, then there's not very much chance of recovery. So it's a matter of keeping the car threading the needle, keeping it on that very, very fine line of being in control. Beyond that, it's gone.
Narain Karthikeyan waiting to come back out. Best he's qualified with the new Ferrari-powered car is 7th on the grid. That was in Malaysia last time out for the feature race. Of course, it all went wrong because he got a knock at the first corner, sadly. Mexico's Salvador Duran, they're 13th quickest at the moment. Still dialing himself into the car, still getting himself back up to speed, but with a brand new car. So we'll expect him to make some improvements perhaps as we go into the next session. There was a bit of a disappointing run for New Zealand, so now there's a bit of pressure, there's no doubt, on this young man's shoulders, John. Chris van der Drift, he's really got to deliver in this next session.
Yes, and I mean, just looking at Chris, how he sits in the car, he's a tall guy, he's pretty big every direction, and he's not able to get down as low into the cockpit as some of the other competitors around him. There you get a good idea of what you can do. And Fabio Piccioni for Team Monaco. Also, he was working the steering wheel so much this morning, I mean, almost overdriving, trying to drag a time out of the car by actually horsing it around. And of course, all that was doing was really taking you nowhere.
Yep, but still opportunity to see what he can do as we continue to look at Fabio Piccioni for Monaco. His joint seat holder, Hubertus Balsen, drove the car in the rookie session yesterday. I think that's probably the first time that both seat holders, as some teams do have joint seat holders, but usually in the past it's been a driver and a businessman. Well, Hubertus Balsen is a bit of both. He is a very successful businessman, but he enjoys his racing as well.
Yeah, and again, a very tall guy, big stature, struggled to get into the car. And he did actually cause, I think, one at least, if not more, red flags during that initial running on Friday morning.
So the times at the moment, Ireland on top from the first segment of qualifying. Was got 7 minutes still to go here. Bit of action beginning to happen in the pit boxes. France are currently third. Watch out for Loic Duval. He's got a great record here. He came close to winning last year. He was on pole position for one of the races, was Duval, for the feature race in fact, but lost out in the two pit stops. They lost a position on each of the 2 pit stops. So Duval could come back in this one. He's 0.2 of a second off Ireland's pace currently, so we'll see if he can improve on that. Looks like Satrio Hermanto is going to be first out for Indonesia, currently lying 18th, so he's slowest of those that put in a representative time. The only car slower was South Africa, which went off, of course.
Yes, and I mean, frankly, for Satrio Hermanto and Team Indonesia, there's nothing to lose going out at an early stage in the session. A lot more to be gained, and just have a clear track, focus on what you can do, and try and make the lap clean, neat and tidy, and just try and pick up some time. I mean, his time 121.3, I suspect, was on a set of used tyres. It's that far away from the time he did this morning. He did a 17.4 this morning, so clearly it was not a new set of tyres, other than he might have had a massive off somewhere that we didn't have to pick up during that rather sort of busy period of qualifying towards the end.
So Brazil's Felipe Guimarães, the 17-year-old there, just getting ready to come out again. Here's Dan Clark, man who raced in British Formula 4, British F3, and then of course made a big jump, went to race in the States in Champ Cars and put in some good performances. I mean, he was right up front in several of the races, but he also got involved in a little bit more than his fair share of accident damage, and it got him into trouble. He was actually suspended for one race by the race director because they felt he'd caused too many problems. Seemed to settle down a bit in the latter stages of the season, but in fact he's been out of top-line single-seater now for well over a year.
Yes, and of course jumping back in a very competitive series amongst drivers who are familiar with the equipment, working with a new team, new personnel. They've got to learn you've got to get to know them, in a restricted amount of running time. It is not easy, and I think in fairness to Dan Clark, he's done a very good job, progressed through the sessions, ended up 9th quickest in this first of the 2 sprint qualifyings. I think he should be very pleased with that. Let's see what can happen in this second sprint qualifying.
Here we've got our eye-line camera, John, pretty much the driver's eye view over the top of the monocoque and looking at the radio transmitters, but also the view of the track unfolding before you.
Yes, I mean, that is about what a racing driver sees. Of course, because racing drivers have got binocular focus, they don't actually, you see those aerials, but you're not looking at them. So, but it's as good as you can get. You can't get much more realistic a view from the cockpit, as we're seeing here from onboard Indonesia.
Up to the corner at the top end of the circuit, turn 11, that leads on to the main straight. Really getting all 600 brake horsepower down on the road as he comes out of that, and then just building up the speed up through the gears. 6th gear, just around the 270 kilometre mark before getting onto the brakes into the chicane once again, trying to keep the braking tidy, and it really is threading the eye of a needle through here.
Well, I have to think this is going to be a quicker lap. I don't think it's going to be an Einstein to work it out, but 121.3 is a poor effort.
Oh, much better.
Yeah, 117.266, and that exceeds what he did this morning. So while it only brings him up to 17th, it is an improvement in time, and that's what he really was looking for.
Yeah, big improvement in time, as you say. Not many positions gained, but big improvement in time. Meanwhile, Chris van der Drift on track quite early. 3.5 minutes, I say that, because there's still only 3.5 minutes to go. These 10-minute sessions go so quickly now.
Yeah, but it's 3 minutes, or 3.5 minutes by the time...
Oh, he's had a big... Oh, he caught it. Sorry, John, to interrupt, but he had a big oversteer there.
Yes, he did, coming through turn 9, always a tricky corner. So he's got, at the minute, a clear track. The trouble is, by the time he comes back onto the start-finish straight, will he be meeting other cars as they are right now, filing out of the pit lane? So Chris van der Drift, he's just got to calm himself down. He knows he's got an enormous amount of expectation and pressure from his home nation, of course, on the back of the success of Johnny Reid here last year, but he's making his way through his tight turns, 12, 13.
Let's see where 14. This puts him. Let's see, it's going to move him up quite a lot, but where exactly does it put him? 3rd. He goes 3rd for the moment, but remember, we've got a lot of these quick guys still to go. Great improvement, though, a 1:15.457.
I just wonder how much time he lost with that big limit he had up on turn 9. Let's say he would have taken 2/10 off his time. He wouldn't probably have improved position, but it would certainly kept him closer to that top 3 or top 2 than he would be otherwise.
Lorraine Carter-Kay, and he's trying to improve on 8th place. He might gain a couple, but not a huge amount here. Across the no, he doesn't gain any. So he remains 8th with the likelihood of others around him improving, and that might drop him out of the top 10. But for the moment, actually, that's his best qualifying performance of the season. I think that will change once a few more get out there.
So let's have a look at Felipe Gomares for Brazil, just 1 place behind India in 9th place, to the 1:16.346. Assuming he's on the same set of tyres he did the first sprint qualifying run on, don't expect it to be very much quicker, unless they opted for a new set, and he did, 1:16.074. So an improvement for Brazil. They've got back that 4th row slot temporarily.
Yeah, 1 place gain, so that's good. But this guy, Faraz Fawzi's on a better lap this time, so let's see whether he can sustain it. Not quite as quick to the second sector as he was to the first, but nonetheless, what he's trying to do at the moment is move up from 15th, and he's got a good chance of doing that. Now, how far up can he get? Remember, Malaysia, they were leading the series going into their home event. They had that drama with the radio transmission going wrong, and he ended up making an extra pit stop, and that hurt hugely. They were on for a podium finish there. Let's see what this lap does. Cross the line goes Fawzi, and he moves up to 5th.
Yeah, big effort, big change by a second over his previous lap, so that'll please Team Malaysia, Faraz Fawzi.
Across the line for Monaco, no change, 13th place. Lebanon, no change. Oh no, just going, sorry, onto his hot lap, Lebanon, so there doesn't make the difference. But USA, I don't think on a particularly quick lap here.
They're only behind China, South Africa just ahead, so let's see what Marco Andretti can do. Currently 1 minute 16.859. He needs to find at least a second to get himself into the top 3 rows of the grid for the sprint race.
I think he may have been held up.
No way, but he may have had a problem, but certainly he was actually only a 10th, less than a 10th quicker than his first run. Ireland, what are they going to do? On to their final qualifying lap. Trouble
this
as
was Monaco.
ever. Turn 12.
Caught it, but it cost him a huge amount of time. So, Dan Clark for Team GBR, currently 11th. He's on his hot lap at the moment. I don't think that this lap is going to be a big improvement. Just looking at the split times, we'll see as he comes through. Can he get back into that top 10? That's what he'd really like to do. First ever attempt to qualify. No, he stays 11th for the moment.
just 0.2 of a second away from his first run. So good consistency now going into the feature qualifying. He's got something to work forward with.
Checkered flag is out, but we've got a number of cars still to finish off the lap, John. We could be seeing a few changes just in the last moments. Will Ireland hold on, or will Switzerland get it back? Ireland have set a very good first sector once again, though. It's going to be between these guys, I think. Maybe Portugal will play a part in it too.
3/10 down in the first sector, so it looks like Ireland might be able to consolidate and keep this pole, a provisional, and take a pole for sprint race.
Across the line goes Switzerland, they stay second. And what about Loic Duval of France? He goes into third, pushing New Zealand back one. Team Ireland will still be looking very, very rapid here, I think.
Don't have to do anything, they've got it.
What about Portugal? Can they do anything? They're on a pretty
14.5!
Ireland have held it on a 1:14.5. Portugal did go quicker for a moment, but it's Ireland that claim it back on that last lap. Great effort there. And across the line goes Italy, seventh for Italy. That's a good run. Netherlands, second. Netherlands just gone second, pushing Portugal down at the last moment. Robert Dornbos doing it again, and he is fantastic in qualifying. Did a great job in Chengdu as well.
And remember, Netherlands and Ireland co-share information. They work together, two teams working together to try and give each an advantage, sharing the information. So Netherlands and Ireland probably running identical cars right now. As a consequence, they are going to share the front row of the grid for the sprint race. 15 laps, mandatory pit stop, standing start. That's going to be the key, the standing start to the sprint race.
So Ireland have held it. They've taken pole position, and it's a thumbs up and job done. It's all going so well for Team Ireland. It's their second pole position of the year. On the back of that pole position, their first ever pole position in Malaysia. Suddenly, you know, when it all starts to flow, we waited so long for it to start to flow for Ireland. Eventually got that first victory in Mexico last year. Now look at them, fantastic. Ireland on top, the Netherlands in second place. This will be the lineup for the sprint race. Portugal and Switzerland will start on the second row, and France and New Zealand will be on row number 3. Australia well up in 7th, good effort from John Martin, and likewise from Eduardo Piscopo, coming out of nowhere really there to go 8th. Malaysia and Lebanon will be on the 5th row. South Africa reclaiming some lost ground. They line up 11th ahead of Mexico, 12th, then Brazil, followed by India. Dan Clark lost out a bit on that second run, so Great Britain will start 15th. Monaco 16th, USA lost out big time. Got caught in traffic, I think, Marco Andretti. He's 17th, ahead of China and Indonesia.
Team Ireland lining up first in the sprint race. Sessions 3 and 4 will determine the feature race grid. Over to John Watson and Ben Edwards.
Running second in the points at the moment to Team Ireland, so they'll be pretty anxious to try and beat them in this round of qualifying.
No question about it, and Philippe feels that he was held up. I mean, you're talking about tenths of seconds, but that's all it takes. There's only a tenth and a bit between first and second, and if Philippe Albuquerque felt that he'd lost a couple of tenths, it could be actually Ireland-Portugal, not Ireland and the Netherlands. And of course, Ben, you mentioned that battle between Ireland and Portugal. Ireland have got the 8-point advantage as they came out of Malaysia. We now go into this sprint race on Sunday. Standing start. If Portugal are going to start on the second row of the grid, they're going to be directly behind Ireland into turn 1. They're going to try and force their way through and annex the Netherlands car on the outside of the corner.
Yeah, could be quite interesting that. So we've got the third segment of qualifying underway, which counts as the first towards the feature race. So sprint race was all done and dusted. They can't change now those positions, but what they can do is work on their positions for the feature race, which will have 2 pit stops here this weekend. Long, hard race. It will be over 50 laps, as opposed to the shorter sprint race, which will be over 15 laps.
Yeah, it's the 15-lap race, particularly now the mandatory pit stop. It's going to be a lot easier in relative terms to the feature race. Tough circuit round here, and what we saw last year was that as the track got more and more use. In fact, the fastest lap of the weekend was set during the race. The lap record by Neil Yarnia, 1:14.679, was set actually in the feature race. Now, Neil had a head of steam because he was very unhappy with the outcome of some of the judgments that he was accused of having transgressed. So maybe that contributed to it, but it was actually more to do with the fact the circuit just got better over the weekend.
Yeah, cleaner and cleaner as they went through it, so that's likely to happen again. So Chris van der Drift, he's got that New Zealand car on the third row for the sprint race. What can he do for the feature race? About to find out, hopefully. Still just over 8 minutes remaining in this session, and again it's just Indonesia out at the moment. So Satrio Hermanto has been sent out on his own to try and complete a lap. Probably a good, sensible thing. Get a nice clear run in, not worry too much about any other traffic out there, and to see what he can do. Faraz Fawzi from Malaysia, well, 9th in the end for the sprint race, so relatively, I suppose they won't be happy. I shouldn't say they'll be happy, but certainly based on the first segment of qualifying, it was a good improvement, and I think he feels he can do something from there. But I would imagine he'll also be trying to get into the top 6 here in the feature race.
Yes, I suspect a lot of it was the timing of when Malaysia went out. But one thing is clear, that there's 3 teams right now, 4 teams in reality, but 3, Ireland, Netherlands and Portugal, who seem to have a marginal handle, a better handle on the track and the conditions that they're having to contend with than pretty much the rest of the field. So when Ireland go out, they're going to go out at the optimum time. They've got a very, very quick car right now.
Salvador Duran just getting psyched up to all the this next segment of qualifying. Ferrari engine nestling in the back of the A1GP car. And there we are looking at John Martin for Australia, 7th on the grid for the sprint race, so that's a pretty good effort. And Alan Jones very happy with the progress John's been making, feeling that he's very comfortable at the wheel of this new car. Filipe Guimarães too, are doing another fine job, although in the end in the sprint race qualifying there, he dropped away a little bit, so they've ended up 13th on the grid, so they definitely will be looking to improve on things there. We're riding on board with Satrio Hermanto, Indonesian, coming towards the end of his hot lap now. And we saw him improve, didn't we, in the second round of qualifying? Got down to, I think, a 1:17. Let's see if he can go any quicker than that in this third segment.
Somehow doubted his top speed was relatively low by comparison to everybody else. So for the Indonesian driver, he's going through the motions of 1:17.269, very similar to the time he achieved in the second sprint qualifying. So that looks to be about what he's capable of. There's not much more, we suspect, to come from Team Indonesia in this feature qualifying.
Just a quick reminder for those of you watching qualifying, great way to watch it in even more detail is to combine it with watching it on the internet. A1GP.com, you've got all the times coming through, all the sector times, and A1GP.com dashboard, new this weekend, where you can actually choose to watch the telemetry, the live telemetry from whichever car you want. So you'll get all the revs, the speed, the gear changes as they go round on their hot lap.
So get your laptops out, sit down, watch the TV, and follow what we follow here in the commentary booth with all the information. In fact, now we don't have a laptop in the booth, Ben. We're going to have to get one because the audience back home actually will know more about the relative positions of anybody on track than we will do sitting in the commentary booth.
That's right, yeah. A great way to really understand exactly what's going on and be able to assess what all the teams are doing, in particular your own favourite team. There is the British car waiting to come back out, Dan Clark, who's got the job of upholding British honours this weekend. Danny Watts was in the car in the first part of the season, but his partner Fiona giving birth, and Danny determined to be there for that and to support her. And Dan has got the opportunity, big opportunity for Dan, and good to see him in the car as Robert Dornbos trying to cool down a little bit, I think, sitting in the pit lane. It's quite warm down there. I mean, it's a lovely day. Nothing like the humidity of Malaysia, of course.
No, it's not. I mean, it's a very, relatively dry heat, but it's just such a gorgeous day here. It's been really pretty much this all through the week. There was a little bit more wind that was affecting things, but that's quietened down, and quite ideal conditions to go out and do your day's work, or your afternoon's work as it is right now.
Chris van der Drift back out for Team New Zealand. He's raced this Ferrari-powered car once before. That was in Chengdu in China. Qualified 8th for the sprint race there, went on to finish 7th. Qualified down in 15th for the feature race, so he'll definitely be looking to improve on that this time.
Yes, and going out earlier, as he did again in the second of the sprint qualifyings, trying to take advantage of the clear track and just focus and concentrate on what he needs to do and not have to worry about catching up to lap cars, or cars that have done a flying lap, cars that are on their way out, but he's on his one single qualifying lap. So it's maybe not the best time for New Zealand to go out, but it's probably the optimum time in terms of just clear track, single focus, just go out and do a good run for us.
Meanwhile, Adam Carroll waits for the signal to come on track, and he's been timing it pretty well. I mean, he's been going out when it's been busy, but nonetheless, he's found the space required, and that takes a certain savvy, a certain intelligence on the driver's part, because he's got to judge it on the outlap.
Yeah, but it's funny, people have often said, well, how come certain drivers always get clear laps when the track's busy? And people say, well, it's good luck or it's bad luck. It's not. You make your own luck. And when things are going, when you're on the top of the curve and everything's running smoothly and it's seamless for you, these things fall almost to you. You don't always have to make them happen.
So here we go, Chris van der Drift coming around to go on to his hot lap here. So he's done his outlets, got great support from the fans in the crowd here, and he goes across the line. The clock starts ticking and we get an idea of, a little bit of a twitch under braking. See how he gets on. Remember, he had a big oversteer moment on what was his quickest lap just now, but he gathered it together. And here's that onboard telemetry I was talking about. You can see for yourself on your computer, or you can watch it with us right now on the TV screen.
And just watching through turn 4, it's easy to overrun the exit of turn 4 and then compromise the entry into turn 5. Now it's flat out. Turn 6 is little more than just a turn on the wheel. Hard on the brakes. Careful on the power here. There's so much torque for the Ferrari engine. You can kick the back end out. Don't want to do that. And flat out through turn 8. Then a dab on the brakes. Some go down a gear, some hold the gear they're in. Runs the curb on the outside. Gets away with it this time. Doesn't lose any time.
No, it's looking pretty good so far. He's about halfway around the lap now into the long looping turn 11.
Oh, struggling a little bit, but managed to get it back.
Yeah, he does work quite hard, and he'll use every inch of the track, no doubt about it. First split was 24.0. I'm sure we saw some of the quickest guys in the 23s on the first round of qualifying, so it's still not perhaps ultimate pace, but it's looking like a pretty decent lap this for Chris van der Drift on the big screen as well as on the small screen. The background there and the crowd getting a chance to watch that. Let's see what the time is. He'll go quickest. It's a 1:15.899. He's going to need more than that to really be up front, I think.
Yes, I mean, we've seen 1 minute 14.5 and 1:14.7 from the front row starters for the sprint race. Malaysia, they were slower in the first intermediate. They were fractionally slower in the second, so this is not going to see a particularly great run for Faris Fawzi for Malaysia. But what he does in the third sector, he might claw back a little bit of time. I suspect we're going to see Malaysia, certainly second quickest, yes, 1:16.138, and not a lot satisfied Faris Fawzi.
No, here comes Mexico. This also doesn't look particularly quick here. Similar to Malaysia, perhaps. Just behind Malaysia he goes, in fact 1:16.7, so no, not a great lap from Durant. Now here's Daniel Murad for Lebanon. Let's see where he ends up. Of course, ended up 10th in the end for the sprint race, which is lower than we might have expected.
Yeah, not a bad effort through that first sector, just 28 hundredths of a second slower than New Zealand. So Daniel Murad, every time he gets in this car, you can just see the improvements coming from the Lebanese driver. Very committed, very quick through turn 9.
And he's pretty good on the split times too. He's only a fraction down. Let's see what the second split looks like. Yeah, he's still on very similar pace to the New Zealand time that was set earlier on.
Yes, I mean, you're talking about less than a blink of an eye. Sure. So if he can keep it all together, coming down the main straight into the turns 12, this could challenge New Zealand currently for provisional pole.
I think it will challenge, John, but behind him, I can tell you Ireland and Australia are both going very, very rapidly. He's meanwhile caught Netherlands, so this could compromise the end of the lap.
I think it may well have done so. Netherlands preparing themselves to go on to a lap. Daniel Murad, does he? He does go quickest by best part of 0.3 of a second.
Good effort. So Daniel Murad fastest for the moment for Lebanon, but there's several cars out there going quicker. Lots of purples being shown on our timing screens at the various different sectors.
So Ireland coming through, looking to console that position in the sprint race. 1 minute 14.5 was the time they set for the sprint race. What's Ireland going to do right now? They 1:14.589. Virtually identical to what they did in this sprint qualifying.
Ireland go fastest, Australia go second. Now what about France? What can Loic Duval do? Can he pull one out of the bag here? No, he goes third. Switzerland's Neil Yarni coming up across the line. He goes third now, pushes France down. The others now beginning to cross the line. It's the end of the session. China coming across, they are 11th. South Africa go 9th. Here's the danger man perhaps for Team Ireland, Philippe Albuquerque. He said he got held up on the last run. Let's see where this puts him. Second, he's second, still can't match Ireland though. So it's Ireland, Portugal, Australia. India now into 7th. So that was a pretty good run from Karthikeyan. Here's a good run coming from Dornbos. They're timing it perfectly, these guys.
Yeah, I mean, Dornbos is the real challenge to Portugal and to Ireland. Can he do enough this time to get onto the front row of the grid provisionally once again? Where are the Netherlands?
Oh no.
Way down in 10th.
10th place. He did use a set of tyres this morning, so maybe he didn't have a new set of tyres available for that run, and it may be that he's had to wait for the final segment of qualifying before he can use his next set of new tyres. That's one to be wary of. But meanwhile, Ireland have absolutely dominated that round of qualifying. 7/10 of a second faster than anybody else. Adam Carroll has blitzed them that time, John.
Yeah, I mean, that's domination. That's what we've seen previously. We saw it from France, we saw it from Germany in previous series of A1GP. Ireland beginning to do a similar kind of job, and that was a strong run again from Adam Carroll, just oozing confidence. Remember, Adam Carroll went out to play golf on Tuesday, came in, he was absolutely red, tip to toe, didn't realise the sun was so strong down here, he said, but that's all behind him now. He's absolutely top of his game. Alongside him, Portugal, Philippe Albuquerque.
So let's run through it. It's Ireland and Portugal up front at the moment. Great effort from John Martin to put Australia third provisionally, Switzerland fourth, then France and Lebanon, India seventh, New Zealand down in eighth, Italy ninth, then the Netherlands, Robert Dornbos on an older set of tyres, I think. Malaysia and Brazil were next up, then South Africa. Down behind them, Great Britain only 14th, Monaco 15th, long way down, then Mexico and China. And bringing up the rear, Indonesia and Marco Andretti, who didn't set a time at all. And I don't know what the problem was there, we'll try and find out, but no time for USA. Cars heading back into the pit. So we've got one more 10-minute segment of qualifying to go, which will determine the final starting order for the feature race. Just taking a little look back here, John. Maybe this explains what happened to Marco.
Yeah, he's got it wrong out of 4. We talked about it in track analysis. Overdriving out of turn 4 gets you into trouble, and that's what's happened to Marco Andretti.
Let's go down to the pits and hear what teams have been using which tyres. First of all, Hinch, what can you tell us?
Well, after that performance, a lot of teams were suspecting that Ireland did in fact use their last set of new tires on that run. They did not. Adam Carroll set that blistering time on an old set, so it's going to be hard to bet against him going into Q4. Diana, what do you have?
Well, Australia were on a new set of tyres for that last session, and for this one they've also going to be using another new set of tyres, so I think we should keep our eye on them. As you know, Team USA didn't set a time because Marco went off at that one.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. We just saw the dust on his tyres. I hope he's got a new set to put on, otherwise he'll be in big trouble. But Australia, as you say there, Diana, in good shape because he's third on the grid provisionally, and that really is very good indeed.
Diana, do you happen to know whether Portugal ran new or used tyres?
I don't, I'm afraid, John. They'd left the garage before I hot-footed it down this very, very hot pit lane.
Okay.
Thanks, Diana. Yes, hard to cover every individual pit box, but certainly we've got Ireland and Portugal up front at the moment. As you say, quite a gap between them.
I mean, it looks like Chengdu all over again, doesn't it?
It does, actually, yeah. Same sort of guys featuring, except for Australia. I mean, Australia are the ones that are really making big progress. I mean, Alan Jones said to me yesterday he's so pleased with how John has progressed with this car, and this is real evidence because up to now their best qualifying performance this year has been 9th, and provisionally at the moment he's 3rd. If he could hold on to that would be a huge lead.
I mean, it's massive. I mean, it's just being at the front of the grid in any race, regardless of pit stops for fuel, for tyres, whatever it happens to be. Starting in the front's always an advantage. It gets you clear of the midfield gaggle, particularly in a short pit straight as we have here in Taupo. Going into turn 1, it's easy to trip over neighbours or people ahead of you, behind you.
Well, let's see what happens. They're all getting ready for the final shootout qualifying for the feature race. We've got one more 10-minute session to go here at Taupo, which will determine the grid for the feature race. And it's about to start. Just a few seconds and the green light will come on at the end of the pit lane. I don't think we'll see any cars diving down the pit lane to get out there too quickly. So far it's been, I know I'm going to speak far too soon here, but so far it's been a remarkably clean session because all the practice sessions we've had this weekend have been interrupted by red flags as cars have spun off and got into the gravel and all sorts and not been able to restart. I know I've spoken too soon by saying it, John, but up to now we've had a remarkably clean qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, the one that went off, ironically, certainly Malaysia went off, we saw in sprint qualifying, but Marco Andretti, with all his experience, he got caught out in turn 4, just pushing that little bit too hard. And turn 4 is one of those corners, it doesn't look particularly difficult, but the exit of the corner sort of comes back on you, so you're going out with the tracks coming back in, and if you don't stay on track, then you're going to be a passenger all the way up to turn 5.
The other thing is the wind has dropped a little bit. It's actually changed direction slightly.
Completely, yeah.
But it has dropped, and it's now blowing across the main straight rather than blowing them down the main straight.
Yeah, we had the wind, a tailwind on the straight this morning for practice, but as you say, it's almost under an about face and blowing directly across the straight. In fact, it's almost not even a wind, it's barely a breeze. And the only thing is, for those down in the pit lane, with this relentless sun and thin ozone layer that we have down in New Zealand, better get the old sunblock on, otherwise you'll get nuked.
Now here's somebody who needs to deliver something, John Marco Andretti, because he's qualified 17th for the sprint race. He's currently 19th and last for the feature race after that off we watched.
Yeah, that's just where he is, where he went off just a few moments ago. So he's on his out lap. Hopefully he'll not make that mistake again. But you know, you have to go out, you have to push on your out lap to make sure whether it's a brand new set of tyres or a set of tyres that you may have run in a previous qualifying segment. You've got to get the tyre clean, you've got to get the tyre up to keep the temperature, maintain the temperature. You know, when you come into the pit lane, you do go offline, and it is dusty offline, so the tyre picks up all that dust and the hot tread pattern, and then it's very difficult to clean it off in the amount of time you've got before you go on to your flying lap.
So only the 2 cars are on circuit, the rest are sitting in the pits waiting for their opportunity to come out. It's just Indonesia and USA on circuit. I hope that USA have allowed a sufficient gap behind Indonesia, because they're likely to be quicker, and it could be that they'll end up tripping over the Indonesian car at the end of their hot lap. We'll have to wait and see. Robert Dornbos is watching the screens intently to see what the track looks like, to see what sort of sector times are being set. And there goes Marco Andretti on to his hot lap now. Now he's about 200 yards or so, no, a bit less maybe, behind the Indonesian car. Should be clear enough for him. It just depends on the relative speeds.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is, once you get the car into your eye side, into the eye line, it can be a distraction. You really don't want to be aware of somebody ahead of you and thinking, well, am I going to catch him? Or even is the turbulence, not that he's sufficiently close right now for that turbulence to be a factor.
Pretty good first sector.
Into turn 7.
Yeah, pretty good first sector. He's in the 23s, and the quick guys are into the 23-second bracket, into that first sector. I can see that from our screens up here. Remember, you can see that too at A1GP.com if you want to keep an eye on the sector times. You're looking for the purple time, because that means a fastest sector time. Here he is up to turn 11 now.
Well, 6/10 down, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, no, it is.
Certainly he seemed to have lost time in that middle sector, which is hard to explain. It didn't look as if it was a poor effort.
No, but it still should improve from where he is now. That's the key. It depends how much it's going to improve, and that's what we're going to have to wait and see here.
Of course, that time is down against Adam Carroll's time, not against anybody else who's out on the grid doing a run.
No, that's right. So he could still put himself in the top 10 here, maybe even still a good top 10. Let's just see where it puts him. Across the line he goes, 6th. So Andretti has dug deep. He's got himself up to 6th place, and it now depends on how much improvement everyone else finds in this final session.
So if he can hang on to a top 10 start position for the feature race, I think he'll feel fairly happy. Well, as happy as you can be, because he blew it in the first qualifying segment. But a good run from Marco Andretti to get into the middle 115s. But bear in mind, that's actually 0.938 of a second slower than the current provisional pole held by this man, with a revised helmet colour scheme. Adam Carroll had it painted by one of his mates in Lisburn in Northern Ireland, and it's certainly doing him proud here so far this weekend.
So Chris van der Drift again. New Zealand are going relatively early, and it's interesting their tactic. They've stuck to it. They've sent their man out relatively early in every single session, rather than wait for that last-minute battle where we've seen Switzerland, Ireland, Portugal, France, for example. They've all gone out together right in the dying moments of the session. So different tactics, different strategy, and perhaps the team not wanting to overload Chris van der Drift, the 22-year-old, with too much pressure. He's got enough on his shoulders representing the host nation, and so far he's doing a pretty solid job of it. 6th on the grid for the sprint race, and now let's see what he can do for the feature race.
Loic Duval pensively waiting for the opportunity, currently in 5th place, 1 minute 15.4. 5 minutes to go in this session, and I suspect he'll sit there a further couple of minutes.
We've got, let's just pop down to Hinch in the pit lane. What are your thoughts regarding New Zealand, Hinch?
Well, it seems to be a bit of an interesting strategy, considering the general thought is that the track is going to be better later in the session, but New Zealand are actually pitted quite far to the down pit lane, to the beginning, near pit in, and so if he were to exit at the same time in those dying minutes with everyone else, he'd be right at the back of a very long train of cars, and that could potentially jeopardize the lap. So they're probably playing it a little bit safe, but it might not be a bad call.
No, that's an interesting point. Absolutely, your position in the pit lane does affect where you get to come out in the queue. So he goes out onto the hot lap now, and let's watch him carefully into the apex of the first corner. That's nice and tidy. A little oversteer, but no, not really costing him any time.
No, not really. I mean, just a little flick of the tail, but really he didn't have to come out of the throttle so much. It's coming up to turn 4 here, where you're on a hot lap, you feel you've got the grip, you push that little bit harder, then you realise you haven't got the grip. But for Chris van der Drift, or sometimes being known in the pit lane as four-wheel drift, he ducked through turn 4 and 5
a little lock
really
up.
well.
Lock up on both those corners, just a little touch, but not overly. I mean, it's just sort of containing it.
Depends on the front stiffness of the car. They may run a car maybe fractionally stiffer than others. Certainly noticing the front end coming through turn 9, it looks to me as if it is on the stiffer end of the range.
Well, for Chris van der Drift, it's the first time he's ever qualified a racing car in the North Island of New Zealand. That seems amazing, doesn't it? But he might be a Kiwi, but all of his racing, most of his racing has taken place in Europe. His parents decided to move to Europe to try and give him the biggest opportunity. He's raced on South Island in the past, but never on North Island, New Zealand. And now he's got to represent the whole nation here this weekend. Let's see how the rest of the lap is looking. I don't think this is going to be a massive lap from Chris van der Drift. Across the line he comes, and it puts him 8th. So he goes 8th for the moment, but remember, still a lot more cars to come out.
It was a better lap than his first one, but it's only by 0.2 of a second. And it sees him on the 4th row of the grid in 8th position.
So I think they'll be a little disappointed. Here comes the man who's just been absolutely dominating this afternoon so far, Adam Carroll for A1 Team Ireland. How fast can he go? 1:14.5 he did last time out, and that was not on a new set of tyres, we gather, so it could be even better.
Not a bad run from Paris Fires. He just half a second on the second split. Currently Malaysia in 12th place, so that half second would see him provisionally, I think, get into the top 10 relatively comfortably.
Yeah, that's right, particularly as there's that gap of 7/10 between first and second place at the moment. If you can get somewhere close to Ireland's time, you can make a big move up the order board here. Let's just see where Malaysia comes. Across the line they go, and yeah, second, he does go second, so he sustained that sort of gap, and it's Ireland fastest, but Malaysia suddenly into second place.
Slight understatement on my part. I didn't expect that lap to be quite as good. It was half a second down in the second split. In fact, it was a very good lap indeed for Paris Fawzi, and he's got himself certainly into the front 4 rows of the grid by the time this session concludes.
I think what caught us out there, John, it's so unusual to have such a big gap between first and second. Ireland 7/10 ahead of the next car,
Yes.
and it's so unusual in A1 to have that.
And he was only 5/10 down in Adam Carroll,
right.
Team Ireland, so he was de facto second quickest overall, and ended up being second quickest by the time he completed the lap.
So Ireland now coming through to go on, or he slides a bit, coming through onto his hot lap. He's generating a bit of grip.
Yeah, but the Dutch car is just leaving the pit lane. He will be on his out lap. He will not want to come into interference with the Team Ireland cars. They go out and try to lock out for Ireland. I mean, getting close and tight.
So tight. He was lovely through the first corner. He just tracked right round on the apex, almost hugging the curb.
Well, we've got to keep an eye on the Netherlands car. It's about 300 metres ahead of Ireland on an out lap. Ireland behind on a flying lap.
This track is all about generating slow corner grip, and I tell you what, these guys have certainly done that. Look, he can really get on the throttle. He can get the car turned in on these slow corners. It's working brilliantly for him.
Let's watch the first sector time to see whether he is up or down on his own. He's the person who set that fastest sector time.
He's up. He's up on the first sector. We're waiting for the second sector, and he's
Yes,
up.
the 10th of a second again.
Fantastic performance from Adam Carroll. You're watching a man at the top of his game. The confidence is there. The car is looking superb. Great credit to the engineering team there as well, for both Team Ireland and Team Netherlands who work together, and they're making the car work on a slippery surface that has been catching many people out this weekend. Adam Carroll is looking to set another scintillating pace here. Let's see what kind of lap time it is. Through the final corner, turn 14 he comes, gets on the power, comes across the line. It's a 1:14.4. He's gone quicker again, and I wonder if anybody's going to be able to match that.
Well, that's a lot of time to find. Dan Clark for Team GBR currently down. Well, they're down in 16th place as the field yellow flag up at turn 11. So GBR up to 12th place. They've got somebody off up at turn 11. That's the corner that leads on to start finish straight.
So we'll see if they're already improved. Australia's got second. John Martin's gone second for Australia. What a fantastic piece of driving. But we've got Switzerland still to come through, and we're waiting for Portugal to come through as well. And those both could get on the front row here.
Never forget the Netherlands. They're on the front row of the grid for the sprint race alongside Ireland.
Let's see if Neil Yarney can do it. He's been very poorly, remember, and it's just a credit to him to be here this weekend. He goes third, but Australia remains second for the moment. Across the line, we've got 1 or 2 more cars completing their laps.
Portugal, keep an eye on.
Yeah, they're the key one now. Portugal across the line. He does take second, and Australia pushed back to third, but it's still a great run for John Martin. What about the Dutch car? That's the other danger car here. Robert Doornbos, he's down in 15th at the moment, and it all depends on the lap time as he comes out of the last corner. Where will the Netherlands go? Second! He goes second. It's Ireland and the Netherlands on the front row of the grid, as it is for the sprint race. It is for the feature race. They have repeated the performance of the first set of qualifying, and it's Ireland's Adam Carroll who has set pole, and it's Robert Doornbos for the Netherlands who's taken second. Second row will be Portugal, which is exactly the same as the sprint race, but then it is a change. Australia up in 4th place, and that is John Martin's best qualifying performance. It certainly is an excellent effort by Team Australia, and he will be very, very pleased. His previous best qualifying performance is a 9th on the grid in any A1GP event, and now he's put himself 4th. What a boost that is to the Australian team, and certainly on Kiwi territory they will be feeling very good about that, with New Zealand starting 10th. But what a tremendous performance by Adam Carroll and Team Ireland. He has dominated the whole of qualifying here today. He's taken not just one pole, he's taken both pole positions, and off the back of taking their first ever pole in Sepang in Malaysia last time out, well, they really are on a roll, these guys, and it's superb to see. Who's going to stop them? That's the question. They've got an 8-point lead in the championship, and it's going to be tough for the others to go up against them on race day here. But for the moment, it's Adam Carroll taking pole position, and by a decent margin. It was 0.2 of a second in the end, his edge over Robert Doornbos for the Netherlands, and that's a pretty comfortable margin on a shortish circuit like this. So celebrations can sort of begin, although I think they'll wait till tomorrow. There's still some serious work to be done here if they're going to convert 2 good qualifying performances into 2 solid points-paying finishes come Sunday. But, well, you have to say that Adam Carroll and Team Ireland have got all the sums right at the moment. They've taken 2 victories so far this year, the only nation to have won more than once. And here we are looking at the lineup for the feature race, and it'll be Ireland on pole, Netherlands alongside, Portugal and Australia on the 2nd row, Switzerland and Malaysia will line up on row 3. And well, a surprise for me in many ways is the poor performance relatively of France. They're down in 7th. Marco Andretti 8th on the grid for USA, then it's Lebanon and New Zealand. India and Brazil will be on row 6, Mexico will be on row 7 alongside Great Britain, then it'll be Italy and South Africa. Monaco way down on the grid this time, 17th ahead of Indonesia, and the rear of the grid which will be brought up by China's Kong Fu Cheng, Frankie Cheng starting 19th.